So welcome to the Node.js Community Build Working Group meeting for October 29th, 2019. We didn't have any items on our regular agenda, but we do have a few things we want to talk about. The first one is that we're looking and are looking to bring on some more people to the Build Working Group. And as part of that, we're kind of putting together a job description of what that kind of work is, and we're going to start out by workshopping on that. So I'm going to open up. Miles, I guess you were going to paste into the chat the link to your draft.
I believe I have.
You did, yes. I just didn't have the chat open. Does it make sense for me to share that, or do we want to all edit it? How does that work best?
I'm flexible, whatever people prefer. I think screen share may be helpful, especially for those following along at home.
Okay, so let me do that. I will screen share it, and then anybody feel free to edit at the same time. So where is the share? I think that's the right one. Okay, can everybody see it now?
Yep. Some context on this. So I took an internal job posting that we had for a role at Google. I removed all of the things that were, kind of specific to that role. I filled in the blank to a couple things that I thought were like close enough to what this team would be looking for, or alternatively in places like the qualifications. I left some things in there, even if it's not what we have as the actual qualifications, just so we could kind of see what the distinction was. If we were to, like for Google, to be posting a job posting online, it would follow a similar template to this. Doesn't mean we need to stick to the template. Oh yeah, Sam, I grabbed the picture of the build farm. That's from, I believe that's in Rod's garage. He can answer, but that's from the README on the main page.
Okay.
Maybe we should do some background here on what we're actually trying to achieve.
Sure. Do you want to fill that in? Do you want me to fill that in?
If you wouldn't mind, Michael.
Sure. So basically, we're looking to sort of broaden out participation in the Build Working Group. We're at a level where we're having some difficulty in coping up even with the day-to-day work, much less thinking about the future. So we made a request to the board to see if some of the foundation members can help out by encouraging or otherwise getting some of their members or their employees to come and join the Build Working Group. Part of the ask was that we put together a job description which would help frame the kind of work that needed to be done, along with our guesstimate as to the sort of resource level ask in terms of people and commitment level. So in that context, this is Miles volunteered to put together a quick overview of or basically a starting point for a job description. And we're going to use that as the feedback that we go back with in terms of here's the kind of work or kind of person that we would think that would be good to come and help out with this work.
If I could just add one thing. So what we have here is the template for a job posting. And I was imagining that we would probably include something in here, which I don't think is in the template right now. Oh no, I added it, time commitment. And the idea with the job posting would be this would be for some sort of role that would be an ongoing commitment to the build team. So it could be 5 hours a week, 1 hour a week, 20% of the time, like 1 day a week. We could decide like what the time commitment should look like for someone, or maybe it could even be a range. But this kind of posting would be specifically for kind of like ongoing support. But I do think that there's also value and room for us to consider something that would be similar to like a statement of work, like an SOW. So Rod, for example, a clearly scoped project would be something like putting a CDN in front of the build resources while maintaining the ability to have stats on downloads. And I think something like that, very specifically, could be handled by a statement of work, because that's a very well scoped project. If we have someone who has the skill set and perhaps works for an organization that we can say is bondable, that wants to step up, and we could say it's a 20-hour project or something like that, or a 10-hour project, and they're willing to commit that time to work on that scoped work. A project like that is not necessarily ongoing. It's a one-time thing as compared to something like this that is a regular thing. It is also the kind of thing, perhaps I could convince Google to help hire contractors to focus on it, as opposed to having the foundation do it. This is all just I'm kind of thinking out loud about ways to solve things, but it seems to me like we have a combination of ongoing maintenance labor that we need stuff for, as well as specifically scoped work. The Mac build stuff is another example of something that's like a specific project. And I think there could be value in both of these kinds of documents or way of framing the work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I can imagine us, if we knew that there were companies that were willing to step up for piecework, then I can imagine us getting into a routine of coming up with SOWs for, here's something we need done. Would somebody mind filling this, please?
Yeah, exactly.
There is work involved in producing this SOW, is the unfortunate part.
Right.
We still need to do that piece.
Yep. But I think especially for I think we all know a handful of long-term projects we've been unable to get done just for the sake of bandwidth. And so I was trying to think about there's kind of different solves here. One is long-term maintenance, and the other one is very specific scoped work. And to be honest, I think that this is, if we can create something here that works. I've been talking to some managers internally as well, and they were saying, hey, if you could give me stuff like this, it would really help me with rallying individual contributors and getting support for this work. And using it in a format and a language that businesses understand will also really help with kind of justifying the expenses. And I think that if we can find success here, this can actually be a really, really interesting pattern that lots of other projects could potentially utilize, and may help companies as a whole, better support open source. I know I'm being really, really forward thinking on that, and maybe a little bit naive, but I think it's exciting as a potential solution.
I'm with you, Miles. I think this sounds like because it would match really well with particularly large companies in the way they work. So it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's like a good thing. Although I think making sure we have the sort of the base commitment ongoing is maybe going to be a prerequisite for that, in terms of you need enough sort of regular work going on before you can sort of piece off the bigger pieces.
Yeah, and to that point, I think something I'm trying to do right now with the Build working group is try to match the commitment to the available people resources, which currently means scaling down what we're doing. So trying to trim off some of the additional fluff that we're managing that we probably don't need to, remove some distributions or platforms that we don't, are not critical, and just try and pare it down a little bit to be more realistic, because we have overextended in our enthusiasm over the past 5 years. And now we find ourselves without the resources to manage the way we've overextended. So if we don't get that regular stuff, the regular commitment to take care of the little things that you can't scope in an SOW because they're little things and they need reacting relatively quickly, then we're still going to have to pare that back to be more realistic. So that there is a baseline requirement there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that we're depending on the individuals here that, like myself, that we're assuming are going to be around forever. And that's bad practice, because it's not true. People will move on. People will get sick of it. I'll get sick of it. I'll want to move on. Same with others here. So we shouldn't bake in what we have. We need to make sure that we have a process where we can revive and refresh.
Right, and I think I filled into the time commitment because there was a little bit of email discussion already in terms of, when I relayed the ask in terms of the time commitment. And I think the feedback that I've seen so far is, the ask might be something in like 20 to 25% per week per volunteer. And, ideally we'd have 4 volunteers with that level of commitment. And, to Rod's point, that would give us redundancy in terms of, if somebody decides to move off, you've still got, 3 out of 4 to keep things going while, you cycle somebody new in. And it, would be enough critical mass to probably keep up and also start to think a little bit longer term versus, what do we have to do today? So I don't know, Miles, was there anything more? Like, is that in terms of, what we needed to fill in there? Is that going to be enough in terms of what you were looking for?
I think so. I mean, I think if we go through and just fill in all the blanks that are on here, that's like a good first step. I can then myself take this, bring it to managers and ICs internally at Google, see if I can get a bite. I would say probably a good iteration here, although I'm open, would be Michael, maybe you and I don't know if this is something you need to do as much, but this gets filled out. I could take it for feedback internally. We can do an iteration on it and then bring it to the board to have other companies present it, because it might be good to have a tight feedback loop before we kind of disperse it to other members.
Yeah, I like that approach, provided that doesn't delay it by more than a week or 2.
I should be able to get fairly quick feedback. I already know the managers that I would want to put this by. I could just share the doc with them and they could comment in line.
Okay. So yeah, I meant, when I was asking before, I meant specifically on the time commitment. So yeah, otherwise let's see if we can go through and fill this out completely to the point where you can do that thing. So I just want to walk from the top to the bottom.
Yeah. Would you like me to walk through it or would you like to do it?
I'm happy either way.
Well, how about we just go through the whole thing really quickly, because I've got to drop in 5 minutes and then.
Okay, sure.
So who are we? The Node.js Build Working Group, our mission. I think there is just a small bit about what the Build Working Group does, what they're responsible for. Maybe assume that the person who is seeing this knows nothing about what the Build Working Group does or what they're responsible for. So, this would be the section where we could put that. About the job, we may want to also change the language on it from job. I don't know if we want to.
I'm going to say role.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because it's not like we're, and if you've even got build work group role template at the top. So
yeah. We've got the target level. I put mid to senior. I don't think that this is necessarily a role that fits for those who are junior, but I'm flexible on that if people disagree with me. For job category, I put operations. So comparatively, let me dig up the doc that I iterated this off of.
I'm wondering if these specialty and family, does that really matter in terms of what we're doing here? Because in each organization may need to map that into what they use internally, but us coming up with something, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it may not. Here it was this was for a developer programs engineer role, and it said job category developer relations, job specialty general software development, developer programs engineer. So we can maybe fold those all into one.
I would just leave it at job category operations. Is that, unless does that fit what you would say, Rod, or is there something else that?
I think it's broad is fine. I don't know. I mean, Michael, you two work at big companies. I don't, haven't, so you can think better how they think about this kind of categorization. Yeah,
and I'm not a manager, so I'm not as into the specifics on this. I'm not sure that, and I guess my point is I don't think that we need to agonize over it, because as long as we have enough information for a company to map it to what they think it should be, that should be fine, right? And we won't get it right in terms of whatever an internal company is using anyway.
Yeah.
So I think what we've got there is enough. Why don't we move on?
So I would say here we say 20 to 25% per week. I think it might be better to just frame that in hours or days. So we're saying like what, 1 to 2 days per week?
Yeah, although 2 now gets up to be 40%. If we just wanted to say one day a week for people, or do we want to say 2? I don't know.
I think 1 is a good one, because this is saying it's a 20% project, basically.
Now, is everybody comfortable? Like one is enough time. Like it needs to be enough time that you can swap in, do something substantial. Some weeks do 2 days, some weeks do more, some do nothing. Rod, 20%, like 1 day a week sound good?
Yeah, I think a lot of companies are mapping the idea of 20% time, so it makes sense to do 20%. 1 day a week is, I think, a good commitment to get.
Yeah, I think so too. So okay, so let's leave it up to 1 day. Why don't we? I don't know about up to. I would say 1 day per week.
The reason I want to say up to there is because I think that people should be committed to doing a day per week. But do we really need 8 hours of labor from every person every single week?
Well, no, but it's the commitment.
Okay.
As you say up to, that means like, well, hey, you could be 1 hour a week, right? Like it's more like everybody's happy if it's less rather than more, right?
Okay. I think that we should drop the per volunteer ongoing, looking for 4 volunteers personally. I think that might be extra information that's good to state, but are we going to say no if more volunteers come? And I think that per volunteer ongoing is inferred by 1 day per week.
Yeah, okay. I just think, yeah, when we go back to the board, we're going to need to say it's not one person doing 1 day a week we're looking for, it's 4.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We can put that outside of the role description, which is fine.
Okay. So job responsibilities: maintaining Jenkins jobs for Node.js CI, maintaining and provisioning physical and virtual hosts used by Node.js CI and web infrastructure, both manually and with Ansible, maintaining build files, mostly JIP and make, for the Node.js project, investigating.
I'm just writing build issues and failures.
And then maybe working towards like improving like research and development for future or improving existing build infrastructure
and processes.
Okay. Qualifications.
Is there something about the infrastructure for website?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Infrastructure for the website and other. I think we've got multiple websites in that.
Right. Okay. Maintaining and keeping the website running.
Sorry, y'all, but I actually have to drop now. I will review this doc again tomorrow and then send it around internally. I guess just Michael, maybe update me and let me know if everyone feels like it's in a place where it can.
Yeah, we'll keep on talking about it, and then I'll send you a message saying, hey, yeah, we got it into a shape we think that's good.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for being so open to this idea. I'm genuinely really excited about it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Miles.
Okay, what else do we want to add to the job responsibilities?
So
any GitHub bots, yeah.
I don't know if it fits there, but we definitely need somebody who can participate in open source and open processes. Having somebody that has no familiarity with
Right. So down below in the qualifications section, I think that fits nicely.
Right. So down below in the qualifications section, I think that fits nicely.
Yeah.
And actually, there's
It
already
might be worth doing rather than just drop down a quick scan of the whole
And actually,
thing.
there's already a
because there's some stuff. Once you've scanned everything,
Sure.
maybe then we can figure out where things should go. Like,
Sure.
Yeah. Like if anybody hasn't looked to the bottom of the page, take a quick look. And I think some of this stuff is very coding specific, and I'm a little worried that we don't sound like we're looking for superhumans, like a good sysadmin with experience administering Windows or Unix systems with some Jenkins and Ansible experience would be, great. Right.
Yep. So which pieces would you trim out?
Which pieces would you trim out?
I commented on the thing, like experience in programming and expertise in a coding language. Do we really need that as a minimum qualification?
I don't think so necessarily.
Rod?
I don't mind. I think that a lot of what we do is code bias, like we're moving more to code, so it's not a bad thing to highlight. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't think we would disqualify somebody if they didn't have any coding. Difficult.
Sam, I don't know if it's you, but maybe if you could mute while you're on not talking. Okay, so I see you removed that one. The next one you commented on was experience developing on a cloud computing platform, full stack or backend application development experience.
Yeah,
so full stack and backend, like that's just irrelevant. I think that I don't know how that got in, and anyhow, neither of those seem relevant to me.
So Rod, I don't know if it's just me.
So Rod, I don't know if it's just me, but yeah, I can hear.
Rod?
Sorry, I'm got a bunch of jobs I'm trying to do for the top of the hour, so I'm a little bit frustrated. But it's just saying the cloud computing thing is important. The cloud computing thing is important.
I don't have any cloud computing experience.
Were you on mute there, Rod? Sorry, not on mute. Sam, were you on mute?
Sorry, not on mute. Sam, were you on mute?
Because I think if you're
Was
not,
I on mute?
well, no, I think if you're not on mute, there's a big echo.
Sam, are you using a headset? That's probably the problem here. If you're using your mic on your computer, we're getting feedback through that or echo.
Okay, because now I can hear Rod much better. So Rod, what did you think about, we didn't hear you talking about the experience developing cloud platform full stack. Do you think you need those or?
No, I think Sam's right about the development focus needs to move, but the experience with cloud computing platforms is important because that's basically infrastructure as a service or down to platform as a service. Experience with those kinds of architectures, because that's what we use, and but I would assume that a modern operations person would have that. So that's pretty based on.
Right. So I'm going to
deploying virtual machines and managing Docker containers. That's what they're doing.
So I moved open source contributor to the top of the preferred qualifications, and I added to the bottom experience with cloud computing platforms because I think you're 100% right on that one. Actually, we got 2 lines: experience as a contributor to an open source project and open source contributor. I think the second one is probably already good.
Now back to Sam's point about having coding experience. Contributing to open source project without coding experience is a rare beast. But it's still important. If somebody, I mean, we could train someone up to deal with our open processes, but it's going to take effort to get the sympathy of what we do and why we do it. Like, I mean, you guys probably know what it's like to deal with somebody that hasn't done the open process before, they tend to want to just plow ahead, or they're looking for sign off from, you know, they perceive as the manager.
Yep.
But what we're doing here is it's a collaborative process. We want you to put up changes, propose them, discuss them, wait for, you know, enough discussion before moving forward, all that sort of stuff. That's a process that we need people to be able to fit into, and if we have to train them in that, it's a little bit extra that I'm not sure that we have the bandwidth to do, because it can, in some people, it can take a long time to get that.
Yeah, and we're saying preferred qualification, so I think we should have that there, because it is a preferred qualification, and, you know, I don't think people will read these as an absolute. So if there's somebody who's a perfect fit otherwise, you know, maybe it makes sense, but it's definitely worth having on the list. Any other things in terms of preferred or minimum qualifications?
I feel like it would be good to have a, I don't know if it's in there, I don't have enough but it would be great maybe for somebody to bring a particular area. I don't know if we want to enumerate those areas, but, you know, it doesn't matter what area it is. If you're a Windows expert and you've got Windows admin expertise, that's great. That's like, that's all you need in terms of technical expertise. But one of these areas of expertise would be great. I think actually we did enumerate them in the letter that we formed.
Right, you had a list of some. We could look at that and add some things, but it has into the minimum qualifications here, like experience administering one of Unix-like Mac or Windows systems, comfort at the command line, basic Unix shell scripting.
So,
but I can go take another look at what we had in that letter and pull out things that were identified specifically and add that to like the preferred qualification section. Any other, like, just looking at this in terms of, like we've said, we don't need coding skills necessarily. Any other key things? We've got the job responsibilities, which has that list. We then have minimum qualifications, preferred qualifications, required skills. Somebody just edited bots, because I think those are worth mentioning, because that's part of it too, right?
It's part of it, but it's only one thing in a whole. I don't know if we should go too far into the laundry list. I mean, we should write something about how bots are called. Or...
Yeah. Okay, and just sort of under any of those areas, any major thing that's missing that we should, like, I don't this need that, you know, again, I don't think this needs to be perfect. It's we want to give a more concrete picture of what we're asking. So if we leave something out, it's not like we're saying, oh, we can't ask people to do that. It's just here's a more concrete idea of the kinds of things that would be being done. I might just move the improving and existing infrastructure processes. I'm thinking that should either be first or last, just to stand out from the other things. Do people have a preference for whether that's first or last, or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so I guess, do we think this is a good enough first cut? Oh, we still have in there, somehow it came back. That experience in a programming language came back. Sorry, Rod.
I'm still relying on your screen share here, but I don't think it's updated since you first shared it. So
Oh, okay. I thought,
version.
let me try and share again. It's possible that I was ended up sharing the wrong screen. So can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay, so sorry. I lost a window, so I reopened it, but maybe so here, we can look from the beginning. Here, I think this part is. Maybe these are just moving this one in terms of kind of importance. So does that look good to everybody? I think you just went on to mute, Sam.
I thought I unmuted. Anyhow, it looks good for me.
Looks good to me. Should we should probably circulate it as well via, like, we should amongst ourselves. I think
Yep.
that's the Joao, I'm sure, would have some input as well.
Yep. Okay, so I can take this. I'll take the link and I'll circulate it in an email saying, "Hey, we discussed it in the meeting. This is what Miles is gonna maybe we can give a day or two for people for additional comment, and then say the next step is Miles is going to get some internal feedback, and then we'll move forward." That sounds good. Okay, so that's great. That's sort of our first topic. The next one I thought is we could touch a little bit on our OSX work. I mean, I think on that front, there's sort of two key issues. One is the signing, and the other one is just getting some newer OSX machines in place. So Sam and Ashley are working on getting some newer OSX machines. It's not as straightforward as we'd like. I don't know, Sam, is there anything specific you think we should talk about on that piece right now?
Not really. I haven't checked the feedback from the support requests. Like you and I, Michael, neither of us can get into vSphere on Mac Stadium. So we're
the last
kind of blocked there until we can do that.
I haven't looked since yesterday, but I did tell them to go ahead and reboot it. They said it shouldn't affect any of the running VMs. So I'll try and after the meeting go back and see if we have access and move on from there. I know one of the challenges is around getting older OSX versions. And I seem to remember, Rod, you'd done some work on that front before, or at least some investigation.
I think it was actually Raphael that did. Yeah, I haven't done much work on versioning.
Okay. Because it's
so
I
for
guess
Mac Stadium, I don't. Oh, sorry. I was going to say for Mac Stadium, I don't think that's a problem. I don't think we need to more old.
Sam, you really broke up that last little bit. Okay, wait a sec. I think Sam's messaging. Right. Okay. Sam was just mentioning that for Max Stadium, we need newer OS X versions, and the feedback we got from Raphael's, it may mean that we need to do some sort of upgrade or something like that. We need to figure out. For the machines at Nearform, the issue more about is, installing new ones. We can install a newer OS, but how do we get the older ones? I just thought I'd ask if anybody, if I thought Rod might have done some investigation, but if not, no, I think Sam and Ashley can just keep on pushing on that front.
I have an idea of how we're supposed to get them.
Okay.
It involves we need an actual developer account. This is what George is saying.
Mm-hmm.
So he's offered to get the ISO for us, but I think that technically breaks Apple's distribution laws. So we need a full developer account, and then we can have access to them. At least that's what he claims.
Okay. Now, do you need to pay for that?
Yeah, it'll have to be a paid for one. The free one, I can get all the Xcodes, but not the OSs.
Okay.
We should have a developer account already because we need it for the signing certificate. So I'm sure we were paying for it at least at one stage, but we do have a developer account in Secrets repo. So I don't know if we probably should check that out and see what the status of it is at least.
Sure. Is that that's in the infra level secrets, right?
I think so. Yeah. If not, it'll be in release because it was for signing certificates. But yeah, and I've got no problem with that. With Ashley and Sam using that. To be honest, that's going to be a critical part.
Okay. So you think it's okay if I can get it's okay if I get the credentials and pass them on so they can figure out what's going on that front?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I'm actually pretty enthusiastic about having a couple of people that know about our Mac infrastructure because we've been that's been a tough point for us. So
okay, so that's a path forward. Ashley and Sam, if you're back, just touch base with me. We can get the access and we'll see if that's something. I think the key thing is I've seen in some of the discussions, we don't necessarily want to have to be re-downloading, or like if we can get an ISO that we can then stick somewhere, that's good. If it's something where we're not sure we could get it later, then that's a bit more of a worry because of, machine goes away and we want to recreate it. We want to be pretty sure we can do that. So actually, did it sound like, once you get access to that, you can then download an actual ISO?
Yeah, may have to check with George, but I have the ISO for 1014, and you can get 1015 because it's available in the Mac store, but they don't let you backport. You need the direct link, and I've tried that, but it fails to download because it detects we're on a 10.14 and it won't let me backport my own Mac. Okay. So you need the direct ISO itself, but again, we'll just have to check with George tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, yeah. So and sounds like we're good. If you just get in touch with me, we can check what we can do with our account. So that's good. The other issue is around the required signing, and I guess that's one where we're thinking we may put it on the agenda for the TSC because we're kind of looking for a volunteer who's going to have time to figure that out. Sam and Ashley, I think, are going to be busy enough trying to get the machines themselves in place that that's not something they can pick up. I don't know if there's any other thoughts or people have done any work on that.
Again, we've had a discussion with George because he tried to palm the work off on us.
Okay.
But I definitely think you should go to the TSC because especially for older versions of Node, you're going to have to change the Xcode version it's built on because it can't be signed on anything predating Xcode 9. So you either have to change it for every single release on Mac or release a different installer for Catalina and above that is signed and built on the newer Xcode.
Yeah, and then the implications being that older versions of older release lines won't have that, whatever it's called. What is it? Notarization, which means
Right.
install. What actually is the? I haven't experienced this yet. I haven't got Catalina. What does it tell you when you try and install something that's not notarized?
So when you open it up, it says this is not. It either says this is not from Apple or this is not authorized by Apple and could be malware, and will either give you no option. It will just shut the link down and won't let you open it. So you can currently command click through it and do it that way, but there's every risk that they'll take that away when they increase the when they harden up the restrictions in January.
Yeah, okay, definitely sounds like something that TSC wants to be aware of, and maybe a decision point for them, that because the decision might be, okay, well, let's just say older release lines you can't use them on new Mac OS, and then there's a break, or we upgrade Xcode, cross our fingers that everything builds okay, and the min Xcode version that we use with compile, hope that holds up.
Right. My initial impression is if being on OS X means that they force you to the latest of things, the story being that you can only install, 12 or later may fit into that approach. But yeah.
I early on, when I was not a Mac user at the beginning of when I got involved in Node, and we started building this infrastructure stuff. And that was my assumption. But then I encountered a bunch of people who used Macs, were contributing to Node. Very serious people, even like Ben Nordhaus, one of these people, that prefer to use a version of OS X. It's like 2 or 3 versions out of date, just for the stability of it and the guarantees. And so there are people that do intentionally hang back some quite a bit because it works and they don't want the hassle, and particularly as Apple starts to get more unstable, the software they're releasing is not as good quality as it once was. I think the inclination to hold back is going to be there. So,
but I'm
using more versions.
Yeah, I'm one of those too. So I'm not saying abandon the old versions, but it's more about if you're going to be on the latest Catalina, then if only the latest node runs there, that's not necessarily an issue, as opposed to if you're on an older OS, well, all of our builds will still work on those, right? Because I don't think adding the signing should prevent it from running on the older versions. At least I hope not.
Yeah. That I would be fine with that. It would be interesting to see what the CSC thinks, but yeah, that sounds reasonable, and we'd have to document that somewhere as well.
Absolutely, yeah. But okay, yeah. So I think that's our next step, is to flag it, both because we need discussion of those kind of issues, but also we don't really have a path forward in terms of cycles to get the work done. It's good to know that it's not actually like today. There's a click through, so it's not like today people can't install. But it's good to get it on the larger radar that we need help and need to make some of these other decisions too. I guess then the other thing that we might bring up since we're together is the website. And we've had a few instances where it seems like it's been reported as well. We have had a few instances where it's been reported as being slow. There was another one earlier today. I don't think it lasted. It seemed to last for like 20 minutes or something like that, but I'm not sure if there's what our next step would be on that front.
Were there the same reports today as before?
It was like when I just happened to be looking at the build issue, so I saw it with like 10 minutes of it being reported. I clicked on the download link and my first one failed. Like it told me it was going to take 43 minutes. Slowly downloaded and then failed, and then like 5-10 minutes later I clicked again and it downloaded within a couple minutes. I looked at the load average. It was about the same as before. The network traffic did seem to be at the higher end of what I'd seen. Like, it's reporting 21, 2200 versus like when the times where it seems to be clearly running quickly, it varies between that level and like lower levels around 19, 15, that kind of thing.
That's
But I
not
mean,
great. Maybe we should update the folks that we have. So Johan has taken this bull by the horns of getting our connection through to Cloudflare improved. That's the blocker here, is making sure that we can get the logs from Cloudflare when we stop handling anything except for CDN. So Johan has got a bunch of experience with doing the log push and log pull. He took the initiative to go and contact them to see if we could get proper access to log push, which is an enterprise feature. He found that we were without a rep internally. We were just sort of a dangling company, which has been the case with other infrastructure providers. We end up dangling, and as long as we don't make a fuss, we sort of go under the radar. But we've now got a new rep who actually seems pretty excited that he's managing Node, the Node account, and we have access to log push. And so Johan has set up a basic log push configuration, and we are now getting some log files that are stored into a GCP instance that he's currently paying for. But that's something we could approach Google to get sponsorship for. They have offered that before. The idea is that when we get what we need in those logs and we can reliably see them there, we can start pulling them down and doing something with them. But just the fact of having them is the big piece. When we have the collective assurance that we're getting what we need, we could just turn off that CDN bypass and then just let Cloudflare publish downloads to people. So I think we're actually pretty close to that. It's just a matter of verifying that. And if we're willing to live without, if we're willing to take the leap of faith and not hook up our metrics yet, but just do the bypass, or take off the bypass and do the metrics later, assuming that we're getting what we need, we could do that pretty soon, I think. So maybe that's something that I know myself, Johan, maybe you, Michael, could look at what we're getting and see if we can form a level of assurance around that.
Because I guess it's just because it's a different format, so the existing generation of the metrics isn't like that.
Yeah, and that was
those tools
a problem,
an update, right?
Yeah, so we're assuming a particular Nginx log format for our metrics. So we either need to update the tools to handle both the old and the new, or we need to convert the new back to the old format, or some other variation of that. But that's just our metrics. Like, our metrics don't have to be the way they are now. We could actually come up with a new way of doing metrics, and we did even have an offer from a particular company that wants to offer us sponsorship to do. They've got a metrics dashboard, so there's another route there to looking at metrics generation.
Right. Okay, so I guess it's you're already working actively on the first step, and I guess it's we can keep an eye on. It doesn't seem like there's anything fundamentally wrong with those servers. I just wonder if somehow we're maxing out our bandwidth, or you'd increase the parallelism, right?
I increased a bunch of stuff. I find that this situation really strange, because this is not a massive amount of bandwidth. I think, well, it's not a massive amount of traffic. My only outstanding suspicion is that because our binaries have got so big, that it is to do with volume. And maybe we're even hitting, maybe this is something I haven't looked at, but maybe we're hitting DigitalOcean limits. And maybe I should talk to maybe I should talk to our DigitalOcean person, because he's really good. And see if he has any analysis on that.
That would be good, because my first guess, just on my I'd written I didn't write, I found on the internet a script that was using the network IO, and it seems like when we see the issue, that's pretty much at a cap, and I've never seen it higher than that number. And then when it's going well, it usually varies between that and something lower. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised if it's like we're just hitting the peak bandwidth that we're allowed to do. And then there's enough requests in parallel at those times that they just all go more slowly.
Yeah, because droplets have a bandwidth cap on each different type, so that is entirely possible. I think we may have metrics in there, so I'll try and have a look today, and then maybe shoot off an email.
Okay.
To DigitalOcean.
Okay, thanks. That sounds like a good next step.
Yeah.
We're at time, but maybe just very quickly, the joint migration. Is there anything we need to sync on that front? As I understand, there were kind of three pieces: the SmartOS machines, which I think are pretty much in place, minus cleaning up the old ones. There was the linting, which I see you've got some issues open to cover. The cross compilation, which Joe I think has got underhand, and then the two other machines which were going to be imaged, which I think is kind of, you said go ahead and just waiting to hear that there's images that then you'd look at to start up at the right time.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, the linting thing was just get rid of that FreeBSD 10 image, and I think we are ready to pull the trigger on that. So that's good. I think there are a couple of other machines that are not SmartOS that are in our test cluster and maybe even release. But if you and Dan are taking care of the SmartOS stuff, I can probably take care of the rest. Infra machines, I'm just waiting on Angela to do the image move, and when she tells us that that's done, then great. I can take over and make sure they're still working. And I think there's a couple of other little machines that just need some probably reprovisioning, and I can probably handle that pretty easily.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think from what I understand, the SmartOS, like I reprovisioned the release ones. I did send some links to Colin and asked him to like check out the test releases that were done with them. He did mention having some issues, but I don't know if that's because of his platform or whatever. And Sam, I don't know whether you were complete testing, but it looked like all the test SmartOS machines were also, or the 3 and 4 versions were up and being used for builds. Do we still have Sam?
Michael, when you have the confidence that those are done.
I don't know if you can. I don't know if my volume is.
Yep, that's good, Sam.
Go ahead, Sam.
I didn't have time to check whether or not the builds actually worked. Like I disabled the 1 and 2s and enabled the 3 and 4s. So I think if builds hadn't been working, I think chaos would have been noticed by now.
Yeah, except that those were the.
Yeah, I still have to check that.
Yeah, except it's that I don't know how many old builds take place. I'm pretty sure like the SmartOS 18s are working okay because there we would have people complaining. So Rod, what was that you want to?
I was just saying if you just can take care of deleting those old machines when you're confident they're ready,
yep,
then that will make it obvious what's left to go. And I think if we just take responsibility for our pieces and delete things that when we're confident, then we should get this done fairly easy.
Okay. Yep, sounds good. So it sounds like we've got agreement of who's covering what, and we should be okay. So. Okay, we're over time. So is there anything else people think we need to talk about? Otherwise, maybe we'll call it for today.
I did want to talk about the Docker thing that I've been working on, the ci.yaml,
okay.
But I'm still chasing this outstanding problem that I haven't yet resolved. But once I get that done, maybe I'll try and ping everyone asynchronously. But I'm looking to get some general agreement that this is how we want to proceed. So I'll be asking for some mental bandwidth at some point, hopefully in the next week or so.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I'd even be interested if I guess time zones make it hard. But like if it makes sense, I'm just musing out loud whether it makes sense to like try and schedule some time to get together and go through it, or whether just looking at the files is fine.
This time slot's usually okay. Today's particularly crazy, so I have to drop as well. But yeah, this time slot this day. So maybe if we're ready by next week, maybe we can do another one of these.
Yeah, that would probably. Okay, so let us know how you're going, and if we're ready, we'll see if we can schedule that in.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. If not, let's call it for today. Thank you for everybody for coming, and we'll talk to everybody later. Bye.